Hello and welcome to ACS 3310 JavaScript libraries. Here's the slides we'll be using for today. All of these slides are coming from the course repo here. I'm going to go to the tech@du link here, and then I'm going to go to the 3310 Writing JavaScript Libraries course. And at the bottom here, you'll see the schedule for the term. And then you can see that we're on lesson number 1 today, right? So if you found this somewhere else, you can follow this. Also, the scheduled date might change. So I'm going to click on lesson 1, and everything that you see in this README right here in the repository is what we're viewing in the slides here. Sorry, my slides are not working well with that background image. So anyway, let's get started. What are today's learning objectives? Well, today's learning objectives are, I want you to be able to describe a software library, build your own string functions utility library, and use JavaScript string methods. Okay, so if you can do these things at the end of the class, you've succeeded at the learning objectives. So let's talk about JavaScript libraries for a moment. This asks the question, like, what is a library? So a library is a collection of code written to be used in any application, and it's best when it's written to perform a single task, right? So you might have multiple libraries, each dedicated to a particular task that builds a final application. Okay, if you've used npm in the past, npm is a large repository or registry of JavaScript libraries. Okay. So npm is just like a library of libraries, okay? So why would you want to make a library? So if you've been using npm, you've probably done npm import and imported a bunch of code that you got a lot of use out of. So now would be a good time to take a closer look. Like, how does npm work? One of the things we'll do in this class is we'll write a library and we'll publish it to npm. So you'll be able to install your own code using npm install. Okay, it's also a great way to practice your programming skills, right? So, if you want to be a better programmer, writing code is a good way to do it. And we'll write a lot of code in this class, okay? And then also this will give us a chance to apply industry best practices, right? So we'll add a lot of things to the libraries we write, such as unit tests and TypeScript and some other things. So those are all industry best practices, and we can apply those to the libraries we write. So when would you want to write a library? That's a good question, right? So anytime you have code that has a specific use case, it's probably not a good candidate to turn into a library because you might only use it once, and then, then maybe you're not going to share it, right? Or there's no reason to share it. Code that has general uses, right? So if you write some code and you think like anybody could use this code, that's probably a good candidate for a JavaScript library. Right? If you find that you're writing code often, like you're writing the same block of code or code that does the same thing over and over again, that's probably a good time to write a library. So why make a library? By putting code into a library, you're making it portable, you're packaging it up so it can be easily shared with other people, and it could be shared with you in multiple projects. Okay? It's also like you're taking the concept of dry to the next level. Dry stands for don't repeat yourself. So oftentimes we don't want to, do the same things over and over again, right? So, if we're writing the same code over and over again, it's possible we can make a mistake. We're also wasting a lot of time. If we've written the code once and it can be used again and again, that's dry, right? If we don't repeat ourselves. So libraries allow us to do that in an easy way. Okay, so the code in the library can be shared across multiple projects. So you take one code here and you could put it into multiple different projects. If you make a bug fix, then you're just doing it in one place, right? And then all these projects benefit from the code changes that happened here and the new, updates, right? Okay. When to make, I think I have 2 of these slides. Don't worry about it. So when do you want to make a library? So you want to make a library when you find you're writing the same code in more than one project. So if both of these projects use the same code or the same kind of code, then we would want to turn it into a library and share it. Okay? When you have code you want to share. I think I do have a couple of these slides duplicated. Forgive me. Okay, so what will you make in this class? So you're going to write several libraries, okay? So the first library is just going to focus on, it's going to be smaller and it's going to focus on utility functions, right? And those are actually some of the most popular libraries out there, okay? And then later we'll kind of get into some bigger ideas, okay? Think of the code in this class that you're writing as kind of interview practice. So a lot of times you apply for a job and you might run into interview questions where they ask you to code something. The problems in this class will help you solve those. Okay, most of the code that we've written here has already been written, right? And normally we don't want to reinvent the wheel, but the idea of writing code that was already written to figure out like how it works and why it works is actually a good way to learn things, right? So it gives you good perspective on what other people are doing and how the industry works with stuff. So I think that this is good experience even if we're writing code that maybe already exists in some cases. Okay, so what kinds of libraries are people making in 2000? Actually, I guess it's 2022 right now, but there's people are writing a lot of code. So here is a link. You can follow this and read this article, and it has a link to several libraries that people are using today, right? Okay, so you can discuss that with someone else. We'll do that in class. And what kind of libraries have you used in past projects? So discuss that with your partner. Okay, what about utility libraries? So there's actually another article here that has a list of utility libraries that people are using, okay? And you can check this out. There's a bunch of stuff in there, and you probably recognize some of those libraries. I think jQuery and Lodash are in there, right? Lodash is actually one of the most popular packages on NPM, and it's just a library of utility functions. Okay, so take a look at that and actually follow the links to the repos here and take a look at the code that people are writing, okay? Actually, maybe I'll do that right now just as part of this slide demo, right? So I'm going to go to this link here and actually, you know what? I think I have a link to some of these over here. So I'm going to just skip ahead 2 slides, right? So let's see what kind of code we see. So I picked out 3 of the libraries there. Here is has values, fill range, and Lodash. Let's take a look at has values. So I'm going to go open this one up. Okay, and you can see they have a bunch of files here. It's a little confusing, but all these files that begin with the dot are just kind of, helper stuff and meta information, right? And then they have a license and a README, so that's actually not part of the library code. And the package JSON, we'll talk about that later, is just for organizing your code for NPM. And then the tests are probably just a test. So really, everything here that is the actual code is in index.js. Let's take a look and see what's there. So this is a library that tells you what type something is, or it tells you if something has a value or not, or if it's a non-value, okay? So that's useful in some cases. And this is the whole code. So what do we have here? We basically have one function called has, and then it takes value, and then it returns either true or false to tell you whether that thing has a value or not. But it checks all sorts of things. It checks booleans and dates and functions and whatnot, right? Numbers and things, right? So this is a library, small. Right? There's not a lot of code there, okay? And if we were going to write this code often, it would be kind of annoying, right? That's actually kind of an annoying block of code to write. Better to put it in a library and import it every time we need it. And then if we see something that's a problem here, someone can update it, right? Or add a new feature. If there's a new type we need to check, we can add that here and everybody benefits, okay? Let's take a look at another one. So fill range is a library that just fills an array with a range of values, right? So if you want to create an array of numbers like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right, then you can use fill range to do that. So here is fill range. I'm looking at the code for it. It's longer than the other one, but if we look at this, there really isn't that much here, right? There's a string of 5 function, a pad function, a toMax length function, toSequence function, toRange function. So each one of these is a separate function used by the library, right? So each one of these functions by itself is pretty short, okay? So there's the fill range, right? Lodash is pretty complicated. There's like a lot of stuff in Lodash, but we can take a look at Lodash too. And if I click on Lodash here, you can see there's like a lot of code here, but they have several different functions here. Let's take a look at let's look at maybe we'll look at each, right? So I'll just look at this each function here, and you can see each just exports for each from JS, right? So if we go and look at for each, we'll go get it, right? So some of the code here is pretty short, A, B, C, D, E, F. Where is, oh, there it is, for each, right? Okay, so here we are, right? And then here is a short block of code. Actually, most of this is just a big comment describing how it works, and then they have a for each function that takes a collection and iterative, right? And then it does some stuff here, okay? So again, that's a library, and Lodash is built on a whole bunch of these short snippets, okay? So, so there's a look at libraries that other people are making, and these are kind of like showing us a roadmap for the things that we're going to make. So we'll take a short break, and then we'll continue class. So I'm going to just go on right here for the slides, but you can stop the slide and take a break if you want, right? So let's talk about writing your first library, right? So the goal of the first homework assignment is to write a library that works with strings. So it's going to contain a bunch of string methods that, you know, just are helpers, right? So they do common operations with strings that we might want to do, right? And so instead of us having to write the code every time, we'll just import it from the library, okay? So again, why write a library at all? Well, putting all this useful code in one place will benefit our software development or your software development process in the future, right? So we can write code today that we use later, right? And we won't have to write it again and again. Okay, so let's talk about string functions for a minute. So this is just vanilla JavaScript, right? So JavaScript gives us a few methods on the string class that lets us, you know, manipulate strings, right? So there's actually a whole bunch of methods, but here's a few of them that we're going to use, right? So let me actually close these tabs here, and we will take a look at some of these, right? So this is string to uppercase. So string to uppercase converts all the letters in a string to their uppercase equivalent, okay? String slice splits a string into slices or into smaller strings, right? String split splits a string on a delimiter, right? So, and then there's like many more. Let me actually click on this, right? We'll take a look, right? So here's a list of all the string methods. So we got, you know, prototype at, we got prototype big. So anytime it says string prototype, it means that you can use it on a string directly, okay? So in other words, like if you have a string here that says cat, let me actually zoom in on this a little bit, right? So if it says cat.character at, this, since this is a string and we're using the dot following it, we're calling this method and it lives on the prototype of string. Okay, so we're not calling character at and then passing the string into the method here. Okay, instead we say the index of the character we want. We say character at, and then we say index 1, and it gives us the second character, right? Index 0 would be the first character. Okay, so let's take a look, right? So there's a few of our string methods there. Here's our first challenge, okay? So the to uppercase method uppercases the entire string. Let's take a look at it, right? So if we have a sentence here, right, it says the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. If we say, you know, sentence dot to uppercase, this method returns the whole sentence, but all the characters have been converted to uppercase. Special characters like the period are unchanged, okay? So this is pretty good. It's pretty useful for some cases, but actually we want a function, or this challenge wants you to create a function that uppercases only the first letter. So that could be useful in some cases, right? So uppercasing everything is pretty good. You know, we can do something like this. But sometimes you have a sentence or you have a title or you have somebody's name and you want to uppercase the first letter because that's how we usually write it in English, then you know, to get the first letter uppercased, it would be really great if we had a function to do that. Okay, so the input might be hello and the output would be uppercase hello. Okay, so here is one method to try. Okay, so you can split the string into an array of characters with string.split, uppercase the first letter, and then join them all back together again. Okay, I'm going to go over this. I'll actually do a coding demo in the next video, but I'm going to just outline the problems here and some possible solutions, and you can try these on your own, and then you can take a look at my solution later. Okay, so you can use this method here, split the string into an array of characters, and then perform the two uppercase on only the first character, and then join your array of characters back into a single string and return the result. Okay, so a second method, so if you didn't choose this method over here with string split, you could use this method. So one of the things that you can do with a string is you can use the bracket notation like you use with an array, and you can say which character you want to get at, and you can use this to uppercase the first character, and then you can slice the string to get all the characters after the first and then combine the two together. So you can uppercase the first character with these two steps and then combine it with the rest of the string using this step and then return the results. Okay? So the other thing that you'll want to do is you'll want to make a function that takes in a string and then returns a string where the first letter is uppercase. So your function would look like this, and you would put your solution code in here, and then if you called the function, it would work like this. So you would say upper first, you'd pass your string in, and then the result would look something like this, where the first letter was uppercased. Okay? And then we have challenge number 2. So after you've done challenge number 1, try challenge number 2. So challenge number 2 is to uppercase the first letter of each word in a string. So for example, if the input was hello world, right, we have 2 words here because they're separated by a space, right, it would return a string that looks like this, where each word had an uppercase first letter. Okay, and you can use all the tools that we just looked at by combining them in different ways to create a solution for this. Okay, so let me ask you the question now, like for the second one, what is your strategy, right? And what methods, what string methods would you use? And then maybe, you know, as a starting off point, why don't you write some pseudocode and then give it a try and come up with a solution. And then, like I said, I'll have another video that goes over a solution. Okay. So I guess actually I wrote kind of a solution here a little bit. I kind of outlined it, right? So you could split the string on the space to get the array of words, use the previous function to uppercase the first letter of each word, right? So what's important here is like reusing that uppercase first letter function again, right? Because we don't want to repeat ourselves, right? So make sure you include that in your solution, okay? And then for the homework, we're going to do the string library here. So there's a whole bunch of, those first 2 problems are in here, but there's a whole bunch more problems to solve. So I'm going to open this up. Oops, I got a mistake there. I'll fix that link in the slides later, but we can get to the homework here too from the syllabus page. So I'm going to go into my assignments here and go to assignment number 1. So this is our string library, and as I scroll down, you'll see there's a bunch of challenge problems here. So the first one is the capitalized method, right? So it uppercases the first letter. The second one is all caps, so it should just all cap everything, right? This is kind of just a placeholder for string uppercase, right? And then we've got challenge 3, which is capitalized words. Challenge 4, which is remove extra spaces. So sometimes you have a string and it's got a bunch of extra spaces in it, and you want to remove those. Okay. Challenge number 5 is convert a string to kebab case. Okay, so kebab case replaces the spaces, or it removes the spaces from the end, and then any space between the words is replaced with a hyphen. I think all the words are also converted to lowercase, right? So the hello here is converted to lowercase. Okay. This is good for turning, regular English into URL friendly or code friendly English, right? Okay. And then challenge number 6 is snake case. So this is the same as the kebab case, except it uses the underscore. Okay. And then challenge 7 is camel case. So camel case is similar, except instead of the space, at the word break, every character is uppercased. So the words are all lowercase, but every time there's a word break, the space is removed and that character is uppercased. Okay. So anyway, there's a couple more here. I think there's 10 challenges in all, right? And there's a couple stretch challenges. Okay, so give those a try, and those are the homework assignment. Okay, and then I'll see you in the next class.